Live with compassion, not competition. In a quiet village nestled between green hills and whispering trees, two boys were born in the same year on the same street, just a few houses apart, but their lives would unfold like the sun and the moon, orbiting the same sky yet never touching. Ethan was an orphan, raised by his grandmother who sold handmade candles at the local market. Their home was modest with cracked walls and creaking wooden floors, but it radiated warmth. Every night his grandmother told him Buddhist parables, tales of karma, compassion, and the deep truth of impermanence. Ethan, though young, absorbed them like sacred scriptures, his heart shaped more by silence and wisdom than by toys and distractions. Across the road lived Noah, a boy blessed with everything Ethan lacked, a wealthy family, new clothes every season, and a father who expected nothing less than excellence. Noah was clever, charming, and admired by teachers, but in his heart brewed a restlessness, a hunger to be the best, not to grow, but to conquer. As fate would have it, the two boys sat side by side in class. Ethan was quiet, always helping others, often staying behind to clean the classroom or lend his lunch to a hungry friend. Noah noticed how teachers praised Ethan for his kindness, how classmates sought his help, and over time, a dark seed took root: envy. Noah began to feel invisible. Why him, he wondered. Why does someone with nothing earn more love than me? One winter morning, the class gathered for a scholarship announcement. The prize, a full-year tuition waiver, and a sponsored trip to the city for a national science contest. Everyone expected Noah to win. He was the top scorer. But to his shock, the award went to Ethan, not just for his academic efforts, but his community service and spirit. Noah clapped like everyone else, but inside, he boiled. That night, as snow fell and silence wrapped the village, he made a decision that would change both their lives. The next day, as students entered the classroom, they found the teacher's emergency cash fund missing from the desk drawer. Whispers spread like fire. Suspicion pointed everywhere, until Noah, with eyes full of concern, whispered to the teacher, "I think I saw Ethan near your desk yesterday." Ethan was summoned. His eyes widened, not in guilt, but in disbelief. He wanted to speak, to say something, but then he saw Noah's face, a slight twitch of fear in his eyes. Ethan remembered his grandmother's words, "Do not pass your pain to others. Let karma balance what the tongue should not." So he remained silent. His scholarship was revoked. The school's trust shattered. His friends withdrew, teachers looked away, and Noah stood in the shadows, victorious, yet hollow. Years passed. Ethan moved to the city, working odd jobs to support his grandmother. Eventually, he joined a Buddhist foundation that served the poor and through sheer resilience and grace became the director of a major charity. Noah? He became a corporate star, ruthless, sharp, and feared. He built an empire not with passion but with pressure, stepping on every back that stood in his path. His success was undeniable, but so was his loneliness. One day the stock market trembled, rumors spread, a lawsuit for unethical dealings surfaced. Noah's empire began to fall apart like sand slipping through his fingers. Banks turned cold, investors pulled out, and Noah, the man who once looked down on the world, stood on the edge of collapse. And then, a miracle. An anonymous donor came forward, pledging a massive sum to cover his legal costs and stabilize the company. Under one condition: no publicity, no repayment. Curious and desperate, Noah's assistant traced the donation trail. It led to Ethan. Noah couldn't believe it. The boy he betrayed, the friend he ruined, the man who had every reason to let him drown, had just saved his life. He flew across the country to meet Ethan, now dressed in simple robes, his head shaved, a gentle smile on his lips. They met in a quiet garden behind a temple. Noah couldn't speak. Shame weighed down his voice. "I don't deserve your help," he finally whispered. Ethan looked at him, calm and clear. "You're right," he said softly. "You don't. But I never helped you because you deserved it." Noah looked up, confused. I helped you, Ethan continued, because I didn't want to carry hatred anymore, because if I did, your poison would become mine, and my path would be lost. Tears welled in Noah's eyes, real, for the first time in years. Ethan placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. We don't choose what people do to us, Noah, but we choose how to respond, and sometimes the most powerful response is compassion. As the sun set behind the hills, the two boys, once rivals, now men, sat in silence. One had learned victory through conquest, the other through letting go, and in that stillness, Noah felt something return. Not pride, not power, but peace. Years slipped by like autumn leaves in a gentle breeze. The world changed, cities grew taller, and people moved faster. But within the quiet walls of the mountain temple, Ethan remained rooted, still wearing the same brown robes, still walking barefoot through the courtyard, sweeping fallen leaves with a handmade broom. Noah, after that fateful meeting in the garden, didn't return to his corporate throne. He couldn't. Something inside him had unraveled, a tightly wound cord of ego and fear that had kept him chasing illusions for most of his life. He resigned, sold his shares, and disappeared from the headlines. The media speculated wildly. It was a bankruptcy, scandal, breakdown, but the truth was simpler. Noah had finally found the courage to stop running. At first, he spent his days in silence. Then he began visiting small communities, speaking not about business or success, but about the cost of competition, the burden of envy, and the freedom of forgiveness. He never mentioned Ethan by name, nor did Ethan seek recognition. Their story remained a quiet thread beneath the surface, one that only the two of them truly understood, until one day, fate decided it was time for that thread to become a bridge. A young woman named Clara appeared at the temple gates. She had heard about the monk who once saved a man who had destroyed his future. She didn't believe it was true. Not really. But something in her, perhaps the last piece of hope, brought her here. Clara was dying, not of disease, but of despair. She was a university student, brilliant, but burned out. She had always been first in grades, in contests, in achievements, but the pressure had eaten her from the inside. She had lost friends to suicide. Her boyfriend left her, saying, "You love winning more than me." And most of all, she hated herself for not being able to stop. She wanted to understand, how could anyone I choose compassion over revenge? Ethan sat with her under the Bodhi tree in the temple courtyard, as he had with countless seekers before. He didn't preach, he listened, and then, with the same quiet voice that once healed Noah's shame, he told her a story, not of karma as punishment, but karma as cause and consequence. He said, when we act out of jealousy, we create a seed. That seed, even if unseen for years, will bloom, not always in the life of the one we target, but in our own. We may win today, but we lose the peace we needed most. Clara, tears soaking into her sleeves, asked, "But how do I stop? How do I live without comparing myself?" Ethan smiled gently. "Live with compassion, not competition. Do not ask if you are better than others. Ask only if you are better than the person you were yesterday." She left the temple with lighter steps than when she came. Not because her problems were solved, but because someone had finally reminded her she wasn't broken, just burdened. Word of Ethan's teachings began to spread, quietly, like ripples in still water. His story and the betrayal, the forgiveness, the saving hand, it reached schools, hospitals, even prisons. One day, a major news channel approached Ethan for an interview. At first he declined, but then he received a handwritten letter, not from a journalist, but from a boy named Liam. Liam had seen the video of Clara talking about the monk who forgave. His father had abandoned him. His mother worked 3 jobs. At school he was bullied, called useless. One day he almost fought back,
with a knife in his backpack, but he stopped because of the story. Dear Monk Ethan, the letter read, I want to thank you for not taking revenge. Because you chose kindness, I didn't choose violence. Please tell more people. That night, Ethan stood in front of the candle-lit altar and wept. Not from sorrow, but from the weight of knowing. Compassion had echoed further than he could have imagined. And so he agreed to the interview, not to be known, but to pass on the flame. He sat on a simple wooden chair facing the camera. No titles, no dramatic lighting, just truth. The reporter asked if you could go back and change what happened with Noah. Would you?
Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. No, he said, because if I had chosen vengeance, I would have changed myself instead. The world needs less justice and more mercy. Karma will take care of justice, but mercy, that is our choice. The video aired, and something rare happened. It didn't go viral because of outrage or scandal. It spread because it healed. Comments poured in, some skeptical. Why would anyone forgive someone who ruined their life? Others deeply moved. This made me call my father for the first time in 10 years. Some were simply silent, leaving only emojis of folded hands or teardrops. And among those who watched, alone in a small apartment, was Noah. He had changed his name, started over in a quiet coastal town, planting trees with a local environmental group. He didn't speak much, but that night he stared at the screen, watching his old friend, his teacher, his savior, and finally smiled. Then he wrote only one thing in the comments. I was that man, and I am forever grateful. Seasons passed as gently as breath. The temple, nestled among misty pines, remained unchanged, but Ethan's steps had grown slower. Time had etched lines around his eyes, but there was a light behind them, the kind only born from a life lived without resentment. One morning, Ethan awoke with a quiet heaviness in his chest. Not of sadness, but of knowing. He could feel it. His time was near. He didn't fear it. He had no attachments left to break, no regrets to chase, no enemies to curse, only peace, only presence. But there was someone, still unfinished, Noah. Though they had crossed paths years ago, though forgiveness had passed between them like a silent handshake of the soul, Ethan had never said goodbye, and he knew he must. He asked a young monk to help him down the mountain. They took a slow bus to the seaside town where Noah now lived under a simple name, as a gardener, a fisherman, nobody to most. But Ethan knew better. They found him tending to a bonsai tree outside a modest bamboo house. His hands were scarred, but steady. When he looked up and saw Ethan, he didn't speak, just rushed forward and dropped to his knees. I knew you'd come, Noah said softly, trembling. Ethan reached for his shoulder. I'm not here for me. I'm here for you. They sat for hours under a tamarind tree, watching the waves roll in and out like echoes of lives once lived. Noah spoke of the people he'd helped plant trees, of the children he'd taught to grow vegetables, of the apology letters he'd written but never sent. I want to be better, he whispered, but I still feel the weight. Ethan smiled. You are not your past, you are what you choose to become, and you've already begun. Noah shook his head, eyes full of tears. But I can't forgive myself. And here Ethan placed his hand over Noah's heart and said, then let someone else forgive you until you learn how. Those were the last words they exchanged. That night, Ethan passed away in his sleep, his face turned toward the open window where moonlight spilled gently across his bed. He didn't die alone. He died in silence, the same silence that had shaped his spirit. Word of his passing spread like incense smoke, slow, fragrant, sacred. Across the world, people who had never met him lit candles, told his story, and spoke his name like a prayer. But the most unexpected tribute came weeks later, from a man once buried in ego who now stood on a makeshift stage at an orphanage dedication ceremony. Noah. He told Ethan's story not with grandeur, but with trembling truth. He spoke of betrayal, of silence, of mercy that broke chains. He ended his speech with a question to the children sitting in front of him. If someone hurts you, what will you do? Will you hurt them back? Or will you stop the chain and become the reason the world softens? A small boy raised his hand and said, "I'll be like the monk." Noah smiled, and in that moment, Ethan's compassion lived on. A year later, Noah returned to the mountain temple to deliver a wooden plaque carved by hand. It read, "He chose compassion when vengeance was easier, and the world changed." Beneath it, he placed Ethan's old broom, the same one he used to sweep leaves every morning, rain or shine. Not to worship him, but to remind others, greatness isn't measured by how many people kneel to you, but by how many hearts you lift without anyone noticing. If you were Ethan, would you have forgiven Noah, or would you have let karma do the work? Do we owe forgiveness to those who never asked for it? Can the world truly change if no one chooses to forgive first?